My devout brother took my kid to church without asking me, so I ruined Christmas for everyone. Both of us were raised in a family of ultra-devout Southern Baptists. My parents have always been the fire and brimstone, pray the gay away, screaming out the demons, church every Wednesday Sunday, WWJD, Big C Christians. My brother stayed in the church, and I did not. Guess which child is the favorite? You guessed it. So I moved away. Started a family across the country. Made my own life, an agnostic, sleeping on Sundays, pro-choice, Jesus-less life. I wouldn't call myself an anti-theist, but I do not like the direction the church has taken in American politics as of late. My parents know this. My brother knows this. My brother's wife knows this. Hell, our old pastor knows this. So when I found out that they had taken my kid to a Christmas Eve service without asking me, I may have gone too far. I ruined Christmas. I'll own up to it, but I was wary of going home in the first place. For what basically amounts to a capitalist pagan holiday, I knew Jesus would still find his way into the conversational mix every now and then. I knew my family couldn't help themselves, so I warned everyone before I booked the plane tickets. I told them that I and my family were willing to come home for Christmas on one condition: keep the religious speak to yourselves. When my kid is around, you do not proselytize. How I raise my kid is none of your business, and I will choose when to teach them about religion. I made it clear that my kid is not your little pet project, not your path to eternal salvation. My kid is my kid. Do not confuse him by trying to indoctrinate him. I told them that doing so would drive a wedge deep between me and them. They said they were saddened by this, but that they understood. They did ask one thing: if they could pray before meals. I said no problem. They said they hoped me and my family would pivot back into the church one day. No shot. Everyone agreed to the terms, so I thought things would be okay. But then I asked my brother and his wife to watch my child while I stepped out for some last-minute shopping the morning of Christmas Eve. My mom would be too busy with the cooking to help. My brother agreed. I went out, got my shopping done, and was back before dinner. They were all sitting around the living room, a Norman Rockwell portrait of a perfect family, fire burning in the fireplace, a Hallmark movie on the TV. I hugged my son, asked if he had been good for Santa. He said, yeah, and smiled so wide. He's old enough to at least remember what Christmas is. He was hoping to get the walking dinosaur he had seen at the mall, the very same dino I had just picked up that morning. Dinner was delicious. My mother had cooked an absolute banger of a meal. The works. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, you name it. Then my son asked me the question that tipped me off. Can I hold this candle, Mommy? He asked and pointed to the centerpiece. No, son. You are too young. When you are older, you can hold as many candles as you want. He looked upset. Uncle Gary, let me hold a candle. He was mad at me. I glanced at my brother, who pretended not to hear what was happening. He took a bite. I continued to stare at him until he looked at me. You let him hold a candle, Gary? I looked back to my son. He didn't say anything. Where did you hold a candle, honey? He smiled wide as he remembered the words he had clearly been taught today. The Lord's house, he blurted out. The Lord's house, otherwise known as effing church? I laid down my fork and knife, removed the napkin from my lap. Gary, can I speak with you in the other room, please? The family was dead silent. My parents, my grandparents, my husband, my brother's wife and kids, everyone was tense. He followed me to the living room. He said, before you get mad, let me explain, please. I was already furious. Okay, go ahead. One question, though. What was the one rule I made before we came out here? I asked. Don't indoctrinate your son. I know, but let me explain. He responded. And if you had to explain what you did in one word, what would that word be exactly? Starts with an Indiana. I responded. I knew everyone could hear us at the dinner table. We were just in the other room. I didn't care. He was looking at his shoes. It was a wonderful service. He was so excited to go. Susan, his wife, and I had been talking. He needed to see it for himself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He continued. I wish you could have joined. We showed him how to sing along and everything. I was shocked, betrayed. I'm sure my mouth hung wide open. I had one rule. One rule, and they couldn't help themselves. My husband had already gathered my son from the dinner table. Him and I talked it over in the bedroom. Decision made. We were out. Sorry, not sorry. O-U-T. Sorry, Mom and Dad, but your son made a decision that I could not right now fathom forgiving him for. My parents begged us to stay. I accused them of being able to stop him at any point. I asked my brother how he would feel if I had brought his kids to a effing pro-choice rally on Christmas Eve. He was hurt by this. I could tell. They all said they were so sorry, but that they too thought it would be good for my son to see what a Christmas Eve service was all about. I was so angry. One effing rule, down the drain. Okay, they made their decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. We put on our coats, packed up the bags and presents, left at that very moment before I left. And this is the part that I may live to regret. I shouldn't have done it, but I couldn't resist. They had to know what they did was wrong, and what I did next I'm not proud of. We were on the door threshold to leave when I addressed my brother's kids. Oh, and one last thing, kids, it's time you learned one thing. Santa is as fake as Jesus Christ. Your parents made them both up. Ho ho ho. Merry Christmas. I heard shocked gasps. My brother's kids' eyes immediately filled with tears. The last thing I saw were their desperate eyes looking to their parents to explain what I had just said. I'll admit it felt good to ruin their Christmas like they had ruined mine. We left, would not spend one more moment in a house that chose not to respect how I want to raise my son. We were in a hotel on Christmas, but whatever, we made the most of it. My parents called me over and over. I texted them that I would become a part of their lives again once they decided to respect who I was as a person. We will see what they decide. What is more important, their religion or their flesh and blood?